It's always difficult when you want to decide what to talk about. And when you start to look around yourself and you pick up the news bulletin, you actually see it straight in front of you. You can actually see it. But actually, just before we go anywhere, first of all, where's Wayne? How's it back, Wayne? Borsdorf is on. We're going to go. Lee, I know where Jared Kay is and I know where Gideon is. Good luck to them. Okay. Simon, we are proud of Alistair. Even though he fell off, we're still proud of him. And we're happy. Okay. When you look at this news bulletin, it tells you quite a bit. And a lot of people don't always see it. But it says things like Children's Worship Hour. It says Youth Fridays. It says small groups. It says Ladies' Bible. And I think today we want to talk about a powerful story that shows how God uses a small group environment to really help people grow spiritually. How He takes our availability and infuses it with His power to accomplish His purpose. I want you to see the small group as a family ministry, and that is the family, and that is your foundation for making disciples. In preparation, I was looking for a particular sports program, but a Christian-based sports program that teaches you how to use sport and Christian lessons in a learning format. And I came across a website called The Upward Coaches. Go and have a look at it. The founding member is a guy called Kaz McCaslin. And he has a statement, and it goes like this. It is the race to the heart of a child, and the first one there wins. Now, it doesn't actually say it, but it's supposed to, so let's say it again. It is the race to the heart of a child, and it's the first one there that wins. Okay? So this means when we're actually doing ministry to families, and we're talking about kids, this is the life and death issue that we have to do. It's the urgency that has to be taken with this task to make disciples. So the question is, how do you connect deeper through family in your walk with God? How do you do that? Well, look around you. It's not difficult. You've actually got the picture. You're all here. So because you're here, you're actually taking it seriously. You are caring about your walk with Jesus to become a mature follower. And as for the parents, your children are looking at you right now and saying, you are the role model. You are here. You're telling me that worship is important. So this morning, it's not breaking news that we're going to be talking about. It should just resonate in your heart, and it should be an encouragement to you when we talk about family ministry. We're just going to talk about it in general, and we're going to look at some key parts that God wants to work and where He wants to work in our lives, okay? The question is, like any other company, do we have a scope of works? Probably yes we do. Do we have a mandate? Yes we do. And your scope of works, as I said, is right on this document here. We start at cradle roll. We've got ages 2 to 3. We've got puppets 4 to 6, grades 1 to 3, 4 to 7. And we've got youth ministry. We've got it all. But just remember one thing, guys. It doesn't start when they're 5 years old. It doesn't start when they're 18 years old. It's the full package. We want to see the smooth transition in all these stages until adulthood. So remember, adults, you have a responsibility to play for the next generation. And that's why you might have known a slight format change where we asked Uncle Oscar to do something. Because that will come, just now when we put the picture together, you'll actually see what happens, okay? And then we've got the young adults group. Guys, you don't realize what you actually play and the part you play in shaping the next generation. If you ask any one of these kids who are coming out of school, what do they want to do? Well, we want to be rich, we want to do this. They look up at the people around them, and that's you guys. So the question is, we've now got a scope of works, because we figured that out, but does our ministry have a mandate? That's the question. Do we have a mandate? Well, we actually have to go back to the Old Testament, and Zylan, thank you very much. Deuteronomy 6. It looks at this passage, it talks about scripture, and it actually talks about family ministry. And the interesting thing about this was, where's my group? Not the ladies, where are the boys? How many years ago was this written? Plus minus. Okay, come on. 2000? It has to be the girls that answer. I never, my boys, you guys just, you know. Well, guess what? It gave direction to God's people then, and it's still pertinent today. Okay? If you look at it in some ways, it's your Old Testament rendition of what we would call today the Great Commission, Matthew 28, verses 19 to 20. So now let's look at it. But we need to read it with some feeling. So it's, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God. The Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Now, how often don't we look at that passage? Very often, don't we? We all do. But now you're going to ask me, but how does that verse actually fit into today's life? I'll tell you what. Let's first put the verse into context of when it was written, and then let's see if it's still applicable in today's life. Okay? Because what we need to do is we need to make sure that we live it, we understand it, and that it is shaping our behavior and shaping the influence that we have on the next generation. Now, when Deuteronomy 6 verses 4 to 7 is written in that period, it's almost as if that nation is at a national crisis. Because why would we say that? Here's a book in the Bible. There's people of Israel preparing themselves to enter this promised land. And then remember, they've been wandering around for 40 years. So it's like almost they've been to Kraaifontein, they've been to Bellville, they've been all over, but they're still walking. Despite the people's constant sin and wanderings, what does God do? He still loves them. And He still leads His people. And why? Because He wants to bless them with the promised land. Now we all know the leader at the time is Moses. And what is he? He's the mediator between God and the people. Remember, God talks through someone okay? Moses is actually trying to prepare these people to enter the land. So he keeps reminding them of the covenant that the people made at Mount Sinai. This book is actually full of instructions of living a pleasing life to God. Now remember, these guys are all facing this hostile territory. So if you ask yourself, what would it have been like to be a parent at that time? Or better still, do you think they had, for that matter, KFC? Youth? Do you think they had it those days? God wanted them to remember who was responsible for all of this. So He has Moses take time again to impress His word on them, on their hearts and on their minds, with the hope, Davi, that they will pass it down from generation to generation. But in order to get a full picture, we need to go back, as John Derek would always say. He always tells us, do not read the verse, read the context. So let's read the context now. From verse 1 it says, These are the commands, the decrees and the laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you to observe in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess, so that you, your children and their children after them may fear the Lord your God, as long as you live by keeping all His decrees and commands that I give you, and so that you may enjoy long life. Then he goes on to say, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. Now again, my boys again, how many years ago? Thank you. 2,000 years ago. Guess what? It is still applicable in your life today. Isn't it? Great. Now remember the last thing. They are going into this promised land. Oh yes, Belinda, you can laugh because they're going to the promised land. Okay? But do these, as Uncle Derek would say, do these cats have choices? I think they do. Okay? Because firstly, what would some of them say? Some of them would actually say, well, we'll stay right here. We've got our laws. We'll stay right here. We won't cross over. What are the others saying? The others are saying, just like we would say in life, let's just rush in, blend in, and then we're all fine, aren't we? No, wrong. Because that's not what God set out for them, is it? They need to stand out, and they need to be different, because that's what makes us different. But it's fine for us, because Moses has some words of encouragement for those who are going to face this challenge. just like in today's world, sorry. It's a message of encouragement it's a message of courage and encouragement. That's what I want to say. So let's have a look and let's review the mandate that's been given to us in this passage. There are 5 words that I want you to remember. The 5 words are as follows. 1 is focus. 2 is pursue. The 3rd is model. The 4th is maximize. And the 5th is link. Now, you're going to ask me a question, but if there's only 4 verses, why have we got 5 words? Well, let's work through that first. Let's start with focus. He says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." What is he saying? Is he saying, "Hear, O Bellville"? No. He's saying, "Hear, O Israel." He's bringing together a whole nation. That's what he wants to do. But what else does he say with this? He says that you have to continuously say this passage over and over, because you've got to put God in the center of your life. He has to be your life. He has to be the supreme Lord in your life. Let's look at the word pursue now. Verse 5. "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength." He's encouraging us to pursue God, because remember what these are. These are action words. It says with all your heart, with all your soul. And it suggests this intentional and energetic pursuit of God. So what must it be? You must be totally in, completely in. God must be your center. And this is what's actually on Moses' heart. So let's look at the word model now. It says, verse 6, "These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts." It's the idea of modeling. What he's saying is, it's an instruction that needs to be on your heart. Because if there's nothing going on in your heart, what's going on in the next generation? Does Moses actually give you 10 tips on parenting? Or how to get into the nitty-gritties? No, he doesn't. This passage deals with what is going on inside the parents, the grandparents, and the adults of the community. If we rush through the techniques and the how-tos, and we think that it's all about the specific things that we are doing as parents, you're going to forget about the matters of the heart. And that's the important part, because he says, "These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts." Remember what he says. It's immeasurable. And if it's not in your heart, you can't measure it in the next generation. Moses is talking about and drawing us into relationships, a relationship with God. The areas of focus, pursue, and model are the areas that you can't mess up in. You simply can't. Because this sets the relationship that you have with God and what people and how people see you. The example is quite easy. And I'm going to pick on old Jono there. We're sitting here today. Jono picks up a word. We're going home. Jono mentions the word in the car. I'll look at Jared and I'll say to him, "Jared, did you teach him that?" He'll say, "No." I'll say, "Tracy, did you teach him?" "No." All those words that are in his little dictionary, his vocabulary, all of those words are words that he's seeing from and picking up from the people that he sees around him. So it's important that he sees people, like-minded people. Let's have a look quickly about, let's look at the 4th word, maximize. Fifth word, maximize. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. It's interesting now because now we're actually moving into the how-to. It's moving from your genuine growing in Christ at the front end of the passage. How do we maintain the relationship with God and the kids? Because he says, impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. What is Moses actually saying here? It's very interesting because he's talking about maximizing the teachable moments in their lives. And for those of you who've ever read the book, The Think Orange, by Reggie Joyner, he deals with the concept of family ministry and church. He takes Deuteronomy 6 and he breaks it up into a few areas. What does he break it up into? He breaks it up into mealtime, drive time, bedtime, and morning time. So he says these are teachable moments. So, for example, mealtime. What happens at mealtime? And this is the interesting thing, because a lot of you during mealtime will look at some things that you might see that look like this, or if you've got smaller kids, it might be a book like this. Okay, you sit down because you all want to have food, and it's great, and it's almost a very formal discussion. And in that formal discussion, your role becomes one of a teacher, and you start to establish values in those children. And the interesting part about it is if you look at some of the stories and you actually go look at them, you're actually, in some way, actually doing your first theology lessons. And you kind of don't realize it, but you're doing it. The drive time, well, that's more like your sort of informal discussion or dialogue where you actually act as the friend. You sort of interpret life. Bedtime, I can tell you, bedtime is that intimate conversation. It's when you act as the counselor and you build up intimacy. And the interesting thing there is, I can tell you in our house, well, I'm asleep at that time normally, but somebody else spends a lot of time doing that. Those are the most crucial times. Then morning time, well, that's my time because I'm the guy that's up at like 5 o'clock, so I'm there. What must I do at that time, Johnny? That's the first thing, yes. But I've got to act as your coach, and if it's the mom, it's the cheerleader. And what must I do? I've got to give you words of encouragement to get going, right? So it's almost like you're experiencing life. Eh? What is the one area that we don't always cover? And that is an area called playtime, which is where I started originally looking for a program on the internet. If you look at sports programs and you look at, we do a camp every year. So when we do a camp, we get most of the kids going, so we can sort of reach 40-odd kids. But the program that I was looking at says if it's a soccer team, and if Alistair was here, he'd answer the question, it would be 11 plus the reserve, so probably call it 15. You'd have about 30 kids to which you could actually teach to. Whereas now, currently what you've got is a family, and it's just your family. What is the link? Because now we've actually done focus, pursue, model, and maximize, and we've gone 4, 5, 6, and 7. So what is the link? What is the link in this passage? The interesting part about the link, the link sits right at the front end of the passage. And it is that word, O Israel. It's not O Bellville, it's O Israel. It's the link. It says, it's a reminder that in the task of making disciples of the next generation, we need, and this is why it was so good that we had Uncle Oscar here, because we need to link arms, because it has to be the family, it has to be the grandparents, it has to be the Sunday school teacher or the youth teacher, it has to be the church. When you look at the picture that's being created, it is not just you. We always say it starts with you at home. Yes, it does start with you at home. But yet if you're not sure of how to do it, there is support. So it has to be the grandparents have to step in. The church has to step in. We all have a part to play here. Because remember, this was not an instruction in this verse given to isolated individuals, or for that matter, isolated couples. It was given to the whole community of God's people. Because what's important here is that Moses understood that it takes a whole group of people who love Jesus to support and to encourage each other. Remember, Sherlyn, your kids are going to get to a point where they're not going to want you. And I don't mean they don't want you. They're going to love you, but there's things that they're not. I know. I got it as well. You're going to be there. They're going to want your love and their support. But is it you who they want? No. The key here is we need to put other people in their lives ahead of time who are going to teach them about Jesus. So what we're saying is, like, for example, Uncle Oscar does the Lord's Supper. We're putting him in a position so that when we're not here, they can go and get answers. That's what it's about. So coming back to the original question, does this passage now fit into your life? Well, only you can answer that. You must take some time out and go think about it. That's a choice that you have to make. So let's just read it again. It says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. Because these commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along that road, when you lie down and when you want to get up. Just a closing thought. Children are a gift of God, and He's placed them upon us. And since they are under our care, we are always to remind our children who God is, no matter where we are or what we are doing. We can ask them and talk to them about God during that soccer match, while you're having supper, even when you're doing the laundry, which I know that's not going to happen over there. But you can have it at dinner time. You can have it at breakfast time. They're under our care and our protection. And most importantly, we are to train them as God has commanded us. We are to lead them to the one true God.